Different gravy, not just another Sheffield Wednesday podcast. My name is Richard Miller. I'm here in good old the U of K, and across the pond, the man, the myth, the second person to speak on this here podcast, Dr. Luke Ukulele Gledall. How you doing today, Luke?
I'm good. I'm calling here from the sunny beaches of Calgary, Alberta, as always. And I'm okay. I'm a little bit delicate this weekend. It's been a lot of disruptions to my sleep pattern, both actually all from my own choosing and my own doing as well. So, no sympathy for Dr. Luke Liddell here.
Well, none will be offered, so don't worry about it.
Oh, Rich.
No, I'll if it comes up, I'll nurse and soothe your your sore head and bruised pride. Don't worry about it.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I mean, if it comes to that, I'm hoping we avoid the full weight of that during the podcast record, but you never know.
You never know. Before we get started, I'd like to promote another excellent podcast on the ERL network. This is another one of my favorites. I'm sure it's one of yours, Richard's S-Town. So join Wednesday legend Phil King as he shows us the bright lights of his beloved Swindon, proving the tourism Swindon board claim of there are a number of things to do in Swindon 100% correct. Throughout the process, he talks about how Swindon is not as good as Sheffield, and he talks about his time at Sheffield Wednesday as well. Another great podcast on this burgeoning, beautiful, booming network that we call ERL.
It's really incredible, isn't it? Such a rich variety. People just thought it was going to be lots and lots of podcasts, a lot like this, where just boring men talk about Sheffield Wednesday, but actually just such scope and depth to what you can cover on these podcasts. And I mean, S-Town, prime example. Spoiler alert, but when you find out that Phil King has pierced nipples, lordy, it's it's quite a moment. I gasped.
It really it did turn my experience, I'll be honest. What a twist.
What a twist.
What a nipple ring twist.
Yes, which he strongly advised against. Oh, well, after your...
Have you ever been to Swindon?
Oh, I think I have, but it's the sort of place that I think you can visit and maybe not remember a huge amount about.
That's fair.
Yeah, I'm almost certain I have. But
and did you visit Phil King's pub, the Dolphin, in Swindon?
I didn't. See, that would make it more memorable. I should have penciled that in, really, shouldn't I?
Mm-hmm.
Next time.
I mean, there is 2 episodes on the Dolphin, so I mean that kind of makes me feel like I've been there already.
Yeah,
but just saying, it'd be nice to see it with my eyes as well.
Lots of lovely Radio 4-esque pub sound effects, like clinking glasses and glugs pouring glug 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 glug. It's very evocative, isn't it?
It is. It really is.
It's the theatre of the mind, radio. You know that.
It certainly is.
So, with our contractually obliged plug out of the way, I feel sensible to move on to our regular feature.
Breaking hoo-hoos.
Breaking hoo-hoos. Another, I keep saying this, but what a week to be a Wednesday fan.
It's all been for something that I thought that we're typically as Wednesday fans, I think as any kind of football fans, you're very impatient, and the summer is such a long drag, even with a degree of an international football tournament or whatever we had with the League of Champions, the League of Champions.
Yes.
What is it?
Yes.
The
that's National League of Champions.
Yeah, that's
and
the full
of course
title.
The Women's World Cup, which we all love.
The Women's World Cup, yes, which is fun. I enjoyed that a lot more than and anything men's international football related. But anyway, it feels like a long, long summer break. It feels like a long time from when the season wraps up, and then there's a few little bits of rumblings, and the players are still around for another week, and then they have the end of season player awards and all that stuff, and it's slowly beds into them eventually going on vacation, and just begins this genial radio silence of nothing from the club. But since we did our first podcast, which was with the on the eve of cusp of Steve Bruce departing and snaking and sliving his way up to the northeast, it really felt like everything was going to grind to a halt. It just felt, and the club works in very mysterious ways, and we don't really. I don't know. There's like an interesting concept, which is, do we as football fans of Sheffield Wednesday, do we get more news than other football fans from different clubs? But people seem to say there's not much communication from the club.
I suspect that most fans feel like they could and should know more. And then whether that's an actual real thing, I'm not sure, because most companies are not giving out the sort of information that football clubs are seemingly required to give out. So it's a tricky line, isn't it? It's a special relationship being a fan of a team, because if you're shopping, you just go to the place that provides the best product for the best price. So we'd all end up somewhere weird, like Stoke or something like that, if we were playing that game. but football is not a business, but football clubs are businesses. So it's just a strange clashing of the two worlds, isn't it? And
sure, but it's a weird spectrum of, like, in terms of information, how happy are you with X amount of information? But the problem is it's unknown, it's known knowns, known unknowns, unknown unknowns.
Yes.
The stuff we know that we don't know, but the stuff we don't know that we don't know.
Yes. Well, I mean, to me, it seemed like all three of the deadline day signings were out of the blue. There was no kind of
and this is the interesting
any of those before we signed them.
Well, that's an interesting kind of spectrum with kind of like football media and rumors turning into full transfers. There's some which have just been long and protracted, and it's well known and it's played out in the media, probably for the purposes of football agents trying to kind of do a little bit of manipulation of hands, behind the scenes through the public eye, basically.
Yes, yeah.
And we can all think about, like, long-winded, protracted transfers. So I guess the one of this on, like, a more prominent level, is Harry Maguire.
Yes.
Maguire has finally gone to, well, one of the Manchester clubs, but it looked like it was Manchester United were batting their eyelashes pretty heavily over that one. It's the Sheffield Wednesday supporting Frankenstein, that is Harry Maguire.
Yes, yeah.
The man who we used to think, and the man who we used to think as a young player playing for the Oinkers across the road, had the turning circle of a small tanker.
Yeah,
it was just but a man who's fair play has made an incredible career for himself since then, and has just kicked on, and now is an exceptionally overpriced defender.
Yeah, I do think he's a good player. English players are always overpriced. But yeah, that's the sort of one extreme of the transfer window thing. There was a lot of back and forth, and I think probably for about a fortnight it was pretty obvious it wasn't going to be City anymore. It was definitely going to be Man United. But then it still took a long time to get a price agreed. It still took a long time. Ideally, I'm sure Man United would have wanted their new star centre-back, potential captain, etc., to be in the door for pre-season training and matches. So everybody feels comfortable around this new star player. But even with all that sort of all parties being willing, it didn't happen. And it seems in a similar sort of vein. All summer we've had the prospect of Michael Hector either rejoining own or signing permanently, and that's not happened. And I suppose with the passage of time, it allowed a different situation to pop up in that he seemingly has a tacit agreement in place to go to Fulham come January. But that's a guy that's in his prime and is going to lose 6 months of football because just didn't get sorted out.
To draw a long, protracted circle back to the point I initially made, the long, protracted circle, much like the turn of Mr. Harry Maguire, the £18.5 million defender, in terms of information coming out, in terms of like news for the club, I think we've been astonished like the past kind of 4 weeks that we've been doing this podcast, the past month or so, like how much news has come out on a weekly basis and the things that have happened.
Yes.
So I am astonished with the level of going into this week, the transfer window, the level of business that we've done has been pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, I think the quietness of the summer was added to by the embargo as well. So having that lifted, so that was a kind of talking about known knowns and known unknowns. So it's like there was talk of us making moves for players, but until that was out of the way, the transfer embargo, it was all kind of paper talk because it couldn't become real. So it's nice to know that there was lots of work going on in the background, despite the fact we couldn't officially do anything. Clearly, we had lots of irons in lots of fires because the business we've done has been brilliant as far as we can tell so far.
It is. So with that, let's get into. We could overdo like an overall kind of review. Maybe we could just talk about the transfers this week.
Yeah.
The first one is our outs. I guess the only outs, with the exception of Steve Snooki Bruce going up to Geordieland, and that is Lucas Shaw. Or as we've been known to call him affectionately, Rich and I, we have known him from Rob Statton's former BBC Radio Sheffield journalist. Strange but probably very accurate pronunciation of Joao, which we came to call him JWoww.
Yeah.
After everybody's favorite character from Jersey Shore. So he's left the football club. It's difficult to swallow. Fortunately, he leaves his compadre, strike partner, and friend, his Kosovan Snooki, at the New Who behind. A player who I think we would have liked to have seen go alongside Mr. Sam Winnall. But I think the dynamic here is who's really going to pay top money for your chaff.
Yes, exactly. And I think, I was going to leave this for sort of a comment towards the end of the talking about the signings as a whole, but I think this transfer window overall, it seems like we've shown a level of savvy that maybe we've lacked before. That paying massively over the odds for Jordan Rhodes has given us a problem that not only affected his first season or first half season with us, but it's still hanging over us, the fact that we paid too much money for a player that was over the hill and out of form. This summer, thankfully, we seem to have been a bit more smart about things, and hopefully we're going to see the rewards of that. One of those is it looked like we played the JWoww situation and the Rhodes situation. We were never going to get rid of both of them, but we were waiting to see which one was the best deal for us. And by all accounts, with Lucas Joao, we got more than double what their initial bid was from Reading. So that's, that wasn't happening before. I think we've certainly, for want of a better, a more tasteful image, we've had our pants down previously in some of our transfer dealings, and it really felt like
never a crasser but truer word spoken.
But this time it feels like we were the ones pulling the pants down.
We were the pantsers as opposed to the
Yes.
pantsies.
Yes, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Anyway,
but
this is refreshing, Rich, because I feel like I'm the one who says something that's mildly problematic. You know, I feel like I'm the problematic bay of the podcast. So I was really, really pleased to just have a leg. You know, you pull one back.
Yeah.
You pull a goal back from a 3-goal lead on being problematic. So I guess that's the interesting thing. So on a more serious note, I mean, it's frustrating to see him go because he's a player that can just offer something so different. You know, he's had this great super sub impact, like we've mentioned. You know, as a stat that we said, I think it was since like 2015, 2016, he scored 15 goals as a sub in the championship, which is more than anyone else.
Yeah.
And you know, we saw that from his cameo at Reading. Like he was, wow, he took the ball out to JWoww indeed. Took the ball out to the corner, you know, drew a lot of fouls, wasted some time. Just generally took the Mickey out of their defenders, and then just near the end, like everyone's begging them to run it out to the corner. Hutch kills in a pass. He takes a touch and definitely just swivels and knocks it past the Reading keeper. And that was his last thing he did in the Sheffield Wednesday shirt before, ironically, going on to the club he scored against.
Yes. Undoubtedly he can pull a rabbit out of a hat. He has a lot of physical gifts. I do think so. Last week we were both sort of saddened by the prospect of him leaving, but the week before that I was sort of saying, well, he is getting to the point in his career because he's 27 in October, I think. He's getting to the point where he's not a prospect anymore. He is this player.
Yes.
And they're just, even last week in our praise, we said, you know, what follows this brilliant cameo from the bench is a start where he does nothing. He disappoints. So, yes, it's a shame to lose him. And if in an ideal world, we've got the strikers we have are Stephen Fletcher, who is going to be our first choice. He's in some ways irreplaceable. Ati Nuiu, who is frustrating, but I think we might get to this later. But I think with the pace around him, we might see a bit of a rejuvenation of Ati Nuiu, because I think he could drop in as that target man,
right,
as and when we need him to.
So plays a kind of striker foil in the center of that
feeds those two nippy players, takes the guys out the middle, and then gives them more room to run in behind. I can absolutely see that happening, because you can't. There's certain things you can't do when you're playing against Ati Nuiu because of his physical ability. He forces the defense to play a different way, and if he's able to kind of at least do that, be a nuisance and move the ball on, he'll let the players that are more gifted and quicker do their thing.
In terms of another one that was rumoured out was Jordan Rhodes, who seemed like Norwich were batting their eyelids at certain paces, you know, throughout the thing, and then seemingly weird evaluations from us in terms of selling on, and then maybe from what I'm hearing, from what's kind of been put out in the media, they kind of really undercut and did a real lowball offer of possibly a free transfer at one point. So we're kind of like, we want him, but we don't want him that much. And I guess a similar idea of like, we want to sell him, but we don't want to sell him that much. So we're on two different kind of spectrums with us in Norwich for in terms of Jordan Rhodes. The thing that I wanted to say about Jordan Rhodes from last time is the thing that really kind of upsets me about Jordan Rhodes, and the nature is, I mean, obviously he's our record signing.
Yes.
And it's just been an absolute unmitigated disaster. I think really more fairly for I think the thing for Wednesdayites is how good is Jordan Rhodes, And I don't feel like we ever really know because we bought him in as a stopgap, as that player to kind of push us over the edge for promotion. This was the season where we lost in the semi to Huddersfield.
Yes.
A season that's so underwhelming that I think on a previous podcast, I think I completely forgot about that season. I think I scanned past it. I think I said whole playoff final.
You did.
And I did. Yeah, it was just I wiped it from memory because that was obviously the year that Carvajal. Previously, we put the meat on the fire. Now, certainly, we decided to put the meat in the slow cooker as an antithesis to going at it. That second season was very defensive.
There was so little meat on the fire that the lady from that Wendy's advert was going around. Where's the beef? Where's the... dear, sorry.
So the point I was getting is like he was brought in as a stopgap to kind of help us get up, but yet still with the dynamic. A lot of people at the time said we don't really seem to play the football that brings or needs in a Jordan Rhodes in that strike force. And he didn't. He seems to be a player who kind of wants it kind of whipped into him. He wants a lot of service. We never seemingly played a great deal of width under Carvajal or without and out wingers per se.
Yeah.
He didn't particularly like that. So we never really provided any great level of ammunition to see if he can, kind of fire stuff in. And his other regarding play isn't kind of strong enough to be like, oh, he's a player who gets around. He doesn't do what like Fletcher does. I think the thing that's upset me so much, the point I was initially going to make, and which I've rambled and deviated from greatly with a great, with a Maguire turning circle, is I've forgotten. Yeah, I've come so far away from it that I've forgotten and lost my complete train of thought whatsoever. The thing that upsets me about Jordan Rhodes, here it is. You're waiting for it. Okay. You've been waiting for this. It's really good. If you're sitting down, you want to stand up for this. If you're standing up, you'll want to sit down for this.
I might kneel.
Okay, you're going to do that like a Colin Kaepernick.
Yes, please.
Yes, please. Sounds fantastic. We've never been able to afford to find out whether he's good enough. So here's the thing. So we had that period, and it's like, well, it doesn't seem to be working on the Carvajal. Let's ship him out on loan.
Yeah.
He's went to Norwich last year for a full season. And now it's the kind of mentality is like, he's our record signing, but yeah, we can't afford to have his wages because it was too speculative to kind of keep us in this division. So now we can't afford to have him at the club. So our arms are already turned, our arms are already twisted on this one. Like we can't afford, we seemingly can't afford to play him. So I'm actually refreshing that the transfer didn't happen because now we get a chance to say, well, Jordan Rhodes, I think, isn't going to play a lot of games. He's not going to play every week. He wouldn't be the first thing on the team sheet up front, which I would say is Fletcher. And especially since like the first two games, we've gone away with a 4-5-1, 4-3-3, kind of, that defensive kind of attacking melange mix.
Yes.
Is melange a word, or is it just I've been in Canada so long that I see French words and I think that they're actually French words that are used in English?
I think it is a word. Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Okay. Thank you.
I don't know if it means what you're using it for, but
that's most words out of my mouth. I think that's how it works, right? But anyway, Jordan Rhodes, and then from the Barnsley game, we'll review later after the transfer window coverage. We played a 4-3-3. So he's not. I don't know. Then also, I was going to ask you in terms of strikers now at the club. Do you think Jordan Rhodes can play that central striker in the foil striker in the 4-3-3?
I don't. I've got very little time for this idea that Jordan Rhodes has not been given a chance at Sheffield Wednesday.
Do you think this is a new this is a new Phoenix from the Flames kind of concept of like the old days of like Franny Jeffers being like, well, if he played for like Doncaster at the time under Sean O'Driscoll, oh, you score so many goals because they play such amazing football.
I think it's absolutely that, because I've sat and watched him have chances and miss chances, and not it's almost like I think he's really in bad form. So that's a part of it.
Yeah.
But I've also seen no signs that he is going to break himself out of said form.
So do you think still having Jordan Rhodes on the books is a missed opportunity, or are you a little bit like me? I'm slightly optimistic that he's still around at the club.
I think there might be times where he helps. I think, but they are going to be quite limited. I think it's going to be more like, so yesterday, for an example, I would say the job he was asked to do yesterday, he is borderline hilariously bad at. I've never seen someone less suited to being a target man than Jordan Rhodes appears to be. Like how he gets the timing so wrong for a ball that is straight down the middle of the field, I don't know. And it makes me think that he doesn't want to win it. It's not that he can't win it, because how can you be somebody that times a ball, a very quick cross coming into the box, times that perfectly, and yet you can't see something moving much slower from much further away, and can't figure out where that is going to land, to the point where you miss it by sometimes 12, maybe more feet. I don't. So where I think he's got a usefulness, and where I think it actually looks like, if you look at how much he played for Norwich last year, it's kind of those games where maybe it's 2-1 and you're losing 2-1 and the minutes are running out and you're just chasing it. Talking about meat on the fire. One of those situations where it's like, let's just give everything a go. And there, I think Jordan Rhodes is a useful addition to throw into that box, because hopefully you're going to cause some chaos in there. There's going to be situations where the ball just drops on a plate, and he is hopefully that's where he can still do what he does best. I haven't seen anything that makes me think he can lead the line. I haven't seen much that makes me think he can score anything other than tap-ins. And pretty much all the goals he got for Norwich last year were kind of scrambly, bundling it over the line type goals. I was surprised that Norwich wanted to buy him, because they didn't play him very much and he didn't score very often for them, particularly after Christmas. He did next to nothing. So it doesn't surprise me that they were a bit half-hearted in their interest, because seemingly they were pretty half-hearted about his performances when he was there. So I'd love to be wrong, but we're now. I don't buy this idea that we should build a team around him, and he's not.
Yeah. Okay. How do you? So I feel like a lot of people have been saying, I've listened to the commentary again, and I feel like Rob O'Neill and John Pearson were saying this as well. And I've seen this idea running around in social media and fun message boards, with the concept now that some of the signings, that we have a lot of pace and we have a lot of width and a lot of service from the wings. Can you ever see us diverging to a 4-4-2 where Rhodes plays alongside another striker and then get some service coming in from the width, from wide?
Well, like I say, possibly there'll be those games where you're chasing, it's 1-0 and they've just sat back, or it's late in the game. It's, games where we are just like, okay, let's just throw everything at it and have a go. Mm-hmm. You probably will end up playing in those situations.
Right.
But it's just frustrating. I think people have these pictures of players in their mind, and it's almost like they don't ever get shifted. And I'm sure I've got bits of that as well. But I would watch games where there'd be 3 or 4 very good crosses into the box. I mean, when we had George Boyd playing, I don't think either of the wingers are as good at crossing a football as George Boyd is. From what I saw yesterday,
no,
they're wonderful athletes, but they are not going to put a ball on. Well, they might, because of just sheer numbers of crosses, but I've seen Jordan Rhodes miss free headers closer to the goal than the penalty spot. Nobody around him. and he puts it wide, or he puts it at his feet, I've seen him do that so many times.
Yeah.
I just don't think. I mean, maybe he'll get one more chance in the game, or two more chances, and maybe if he gets 3 chances, or 4 chances, he'll score one of them. But I just don't suddenly think he's going to become. I think his injury troubles before we signed him, and I think probably before he went to Borough as well. To be honest, he's just not the player that we all have in our heads from that sort of amazing game where he scored 4 against us for Huddersfield
And broke our hearts against.
But that guy had some pace. That guy had a turn of speed. This guy does not have anything at all. He's weak. He's slow. But, as I say, I think if given a 6-yard box chance, the ball pops free. He had a little cameo moment. Hutch's shot that was sort of palmed away by the keeper.
Yep. I remember I saw that one.
So I think what Rhodes does is he gets it on target in that situation. That was well cleared, but he made sure he beat the goalie and he got it on target. So there will be those situations where I think he will get goals occasionally given time on the pitch. It's just how much we can afford to essentially carry a player, be playing with 10 men until we get to the 6-yard box, because he doesn't do anything else for the team.
So in true different gravy fashion, we've gone and ruminated and lamented at great length for some of our
we've managed to find the sadness in an
striking
absolutely tremendous week.
Yeah, to talk about our thing. So anyway, basically, so Lucas João's gone, and it's a sizable fee, so it sounds good. It sounds a good package. You imagine with Chansiri, it's got to be a good offer for him to sell, so he's gone. Finally, on the outs, I want to say good luck to Mr. Connor Kirby. I hope that, like his pink Nintendo namesake, he inhales and consumes more minutes in development in the process. So good luck to Connor Kirby at the Silkman, Macclesfield Town.
Beautiful.
And let's talk about. I'm sorry, Rich.
Sorry,
just please carry on.
The last good thing with the João transfer is supposedly we have a 20% sell-on clause. So
yes.
If in that scenario where he goes great guns for 6 months or a season and gets sold on for £20 million, we're going to get a nice little chunk of change.
Nice little 4 million in our back pockets.
Oh yeah.
To spend on our next disappointing striker.
Yes. Right.
Anyway,
let's do this.
Let's do the ins. So we've already covered and talked about the arrivals of Kadeem Harris, Julian Borner, and Moses Odubajo. I think I'm learning to pronounce Moses Odubajo's surname pretty correctly.
That sounded beautiful, actually.
It sounded lyrical.
Yeah.
So this week we have a whopping 4 new additions. First up is, before the flurry of the trio of deadline day signings, experienced lower league stopper, Mr. Paul Jones.
Yeah. I'd completely forgotten about Paul Jones, to be honest.
Haven't we all?
So he's essentially brought in to be on the bench today, yesterday. Is that it?
Well, as I've put in my notes here, I said it's nice to have a body come and prop up those numbers. We may never see him put on some gloves on the pitch outside of warming up.
Yeah.
But a warm Wednesday welcome for you to warm up the Wednesday bench, Mr. Paul Jones.
Oh yeah, warm the cockles of that bench.
And as we know, top 40 Joe Wildsmith is out injured, so he will be taking that kind of. Not even the main bench; it's a sub bench, right?
Yeah.
I wish when we said bench, it was literally just a bench, like the benches you get at primary school for PE.
It's what I picture.
I know, but actually, they're more like we're now going into. There's so much redonkulous amounts of money in football, so now we have to give people these kind of gaming driving chairs.
Yeah.
Which I don't know. I'd only want one of those. It heats it and then vibrates for a little massage as well.
Ooh. Yes.
This is it. And if they don't do that, then now as the assistant to Tony Strudwick, it'll be my second recommendation I'll be giving to him. outside of banning chips.
Oh, an outright ban on chips. You're getting worse.
Outright ban on chips. I'm getting. Maybe I'm getting too much like Jos Lukai, I think.
You are. I think it's worrying. How's your tash coming in?
Well, it's already there because I have like a bit of a beard thing, so I just need to shave it down, and then
Okay.
it's a bit of like a Darth Vader reveal, I guess.
Oh yes. Well, I look forward to that day.
Look forward to that prequel trilogy.
Yes, there's not much to say really on Price, is there? But as you say, welcome aboard.
Did you call him Price?
Oh, is it not Price?
No, it's Jones.
Jones. Well, I call him Jones the Glove.
I love it, Jones the Glove. That's his nickname. Gravy exclusive. You heard it here first. Let's go into our flurry of transfer deadline day signings, the trio. And first up, we talked about this, like no great long protracted transfer dealings, everything seemingly coming up very quickly. And this one, I think the rumors kind of came up the day previously. This was Massimo Luongo.
Yes. So I don't know that much about him. I've clearly watched him play against us a few times for QPR, but then I got very excited hearing him give his interview because I think we were sort of debating back and forth whether he's a kind of holding guy. I thought he was a bit more creative than that. He seems to have got some goals for QPR.
So
he describes himself as box to box. And I think he's even called himself an all-action midfielder on his little interview.
Oh, love it.
Yeah.
Action
he
man.
Likes a bit of both. He loves a tackle. He loves a goal. What's not to like?
Oh, loves it all. Loves it all. Box-to-box midfielder is my favorite term in football.
B2B.
B2B. It's just where, it's like, there's action in the box. There he is, and there's action in the box. There he is as well. Again.
There he is again. Yeah.
It's like the Carmen. It's like a Carmen San Diego. They're just kind of just whip in completely. I don't know.
Where in the world is Massimo Luongo?
In Sheffield, Hillsborough. That's where he's at. Yeah. Unless we're playing away at Stoke or Luton, and then he's there as well.
Absolutely.
Ghosting into the box. I don't think anybody ghosts into the box as well as Mr. Kieran Lee, let's just say.
Oh.
And we'll get on to just how beautiful and incredible that man is later in the show when we review the Barnsley game. But but that's the interesting thing with Luongo. So I did a bit of digging, and it seemed to be that basically I think I saw a goals and assists reel for him for the 17-18 season. So apparently the reason why you probably haven't seen one for 18-19, which he got like 3 goals and 2 assists, I think, last year. They asked him to play like a deep holding, defensive, bit more of a little bit of a playmaker kind of role.
Yes.
So people were. I heard someone compare him a little bit in that aspects to a little bit of like Alex Lopez.
Okay.
Someone who can kind of keep things kind of ticking over, but I think he can also be. He can be the action mass that we talk about.
Action mass.
Which is like a play on action man, not just like a blob that's like really dynamic. So I think he can be that box-to-box player. He can get up and down the pitch. Apparently he doesn't have much pace, but he has a lot of energy.
Yeah, he didn't look too bad pace. So he had a little 10-minute cameo.
He did. Word up.
It was very yes, yeah. It was very pleasing, I've got to say. Describing himself as an action midfielder or all action midfielder, as advertised. His first thing he did was close down a defender and make a chance, which he he could have maybe done a little bit better with, but it was literally the second time he touched the ball since coming on the pitch, so I'll forgive him. But then he similarly broke something up near our box and then sort of played it forward. Just looks, and he looks like he's got a bit of a trick. He looks quite strong.
Yeah.
There was a bit where he kind of dropped his shoulder when we looked like we were going to kind of hold it in the corner, and he dropped his shoulder and turned to two of their men and made a bit of a chance out of that as well. So, yeah, exciting times, and completely out of nowhere. I mean, there's not been any talk of us being linked with him at all.
And I think apparently QPR wanted to kind of get rid. He's kind of like a relatively high earner. Last year contract, I've heard rumors of around $1 million. I also heard something else saying he was a free, but whatever it is, I think it's a good bit of business. Looking at some of the comments from the QPR fans, there's naturally sometimes a bit of bitterness and a bit of he's crap anyway. That kind of mentality. Some of them seem to say that he does seem to get some disruptions in his fitness when he goes off on international leave.
Right.
Because he plays for the Socceroos in Australia.
Because he had a surprising nomination for the Ballon d'Or, didn't he, a few years ago? And that was
did he really?
Yeah, that was due to his efforts for the national team. I think he's really a bit of a
I like how you said efforts, as though I was thinking about like someone who receives an OBE, like for their charity efforts.
Yes,
there we go.
His bonza efforts for the national team, mate. No, I think he had a like a world, whatever the weird one where it's like one team from Asia, one team from Europe. Can't remember what they call it really, but Gold Cup or something like that. Is it called?
What I was going to say, what League of Champions is this?
Exactly. Yeah. Well, it is. It's very much a kind of made-up league of wonderfulness. But I think he had a tournament of that where that was the only sort of big international football in the summer, and I think he got like, man alive, I'm doing a lot of guessing here, but it's like it was like 4 goals and 3 assists or something crazy like that in 5 or 6 games. They got to the semi-finals, and he was very much the star man for them.
I love this, Rich, because it's completely new to me.
Unbelievably speculative.
It sounds incredibly fictitious. It sounds like you're just improvising this.
He did this on FIFA.
In fact, I would like a section in this podcast, Rich, where we just improvise player stats for someone. And then they went on loan to Lincoln, and they got 5 goals, and 17 appearances. 2 were from the bench. I did pick up a red card and 2 yellows. We can just do that. That sounds good. I like it.
Oh dear. I've just searched for it. I'm sorry. I'm just searching to. I've got to back this up now. You see, you've called me out on this.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
When I put in Luongo, one of the Google suggestions was toilet break. So I'm gonna need to.
Is that not to do with Luongo, the goaltender? There's a French-Canadian hockey goaltender, Luongo, who used to play for the Vancouver Whitecaps.
Oh,
anything to do with him? Did he?
That could be. That could be.
Did he have to go and have a number 2 in the middle of a ice hockey game?
It doesn't bring up our Massimo anyway, so
I don't know, but that's speculation as well. So there's other things as well. Just generally wildly speculating about things now. Anyway,
he made the long list. I'm just trying to see what year that happened. He was 23 at the time. Oh dear, I shouldn't have. I thought I had something there to bring you. 2015, he made the long list for the Ballon d'Or.
Sweet.
Yeah, elite company. Down to the short list whittled down to 23 candidates, and he was on the long list. I can't find the competition that I've made up. I can't back up at this stage. Oh, he was player of the tournament during January's Asian Cup, which appears to be a catalyst decision. So there you go. These are all it's all fallen into place, isn't it?
Is that sometimes known as like the Oceania Cup?
I think so.
Or that Oceania Cup sounds like a Pro Evolution Soccer.
Yes, it's the Pro
Yeah,
Evo made up
yeah.
version, isn't it? Definitely.
But anyway, thank you for joining us for Different Gravy, the seventh best podcast about South Yorkshire blues.
Bringing you all of the most speculative information about people we vaguely know.
So let's go on to another player that we vaguely know some stuff about, and that's
please.
The second sighting is probably the most exciting one. That's Jacob Murphy.
Yes.
So the man who
he's got a twin.
He's got a twin. It's not Josh.
Much. I can tell you that much.
Coming to Sheffield Wednesday, Tuesdays at 7:30. It's brother, Josh and Jacob Murphy. Well, they get into some scrapes. Let me tell you. Sometimes Josh needs to go on a date, but Jacob turns up instead.
Oh,
and then there's Roger next door. Ooh, Roger.
Go home, Roger.
Go home, Roger.
Yeah, Roger. Well, he's just more pace, isn't it?
It's more pace on the wings. We got bags and bags and bags and bags and bags of pace.
It's really outstanding because if you think probably Iorfa is going to be the long-term right back, probably that frees up Olabajo to kind of be either, fill in on either wing. I think he can play both. He looks very quick as well. So
and also, if you're bringing in that concept as well, is that Iorfa can probably get up and down that pitch.
He's rapid. Yeah. No, he's an addition to the quick. He was our first sort of, hey, this is what real pace looks like. I was actually talking to the guy sat next to me at the match yesterday and saying, Reach looked quick for the last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
There's pace and there's real pace. And
I even think we can get onto the game a bit later, but I think Palmer looks. I think Palmer looks pacier than I think we sometimes think he is.
Yes.
But anyway, that's interesting.
Defender, the pace, but he gets up and down so well.
And then you've got that option, and then that's the interesting thing. If you think now, if we're playing kind of fantasy lineups, and then we've got. If we've got a 4-3-3 or a 4-4-2, and we've got Murphy and Harris on those wings, and then we've got Iorfa at right back, and then if you're playing Palmer at left back, you've got Mr. Mozadabajic come in, and he's like S-Town off a shovel.
He certainly is.
It's like Swindon off a shovel.
I think that's one of the things that I was going to say sort of later. Really is. The squad seems to make some sense for the first time. It feels sort of properly balanced in that, case in point, Barry Bannon, probably our best player, didn't play yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me, I arrived at the ground pretty late, and it took me probably 5-10 minutes to figure out that he wasn't playing, because I was like, hold on, if Reach is in the middle... and then it was like, oh, yeah, wait, Bannon's not playing. And that is... Adding Luongo means that we've got cover in the middle now. We've got... He either steps in and could do the job of a Kieran Lee, could do the job of a Hutchinson, but Reach can also do the kind of Kieran Lee, Barry Bannon type role as well. So there's options there. We've got 2 good options on both sides of the pitch in terms of the wingers. We've got 4 decent centre backs now. Fullback, I think we're probably still a little bit, obviously at left back. It will be a bit of make do and mend because.
Yeah, the interesting thing about that one is I think there has been some talk. I was listening to another rival podcast. Well, we're not rivals; we're all friends. We're all friends here. But they're not on the ERL podcast network like us. I mean, they've decided to go alone, and fair play to them. The Singing the Blues one with James Marriott and Dom Howson from the start. Dom Howson was seemingly implying that on the recent one that we we were in the market for a left back and it didn't come off.
Okay.
Which was interesting. I haven't really been mad clamoring for another left back. I get it, but I think right now it's just like it's the least of our. I guess it's the next weakness, but I don't think it's. I personally don't think it's maybe not quite as weak as people think it is.
I think Palmer looks set to make it his own, but I think what you need to think about is, well, what if we lost Palmer for a couple of months and then you've got a stretch of 10, 12 games with Fox there?
With Fox, yeah. Mind you, could we? Well, how about you have a situation where as Iorfa played left back? I know it's putting degrees of square pegs into round holes, but
yeah,
it hasn't. I think it's worked fine enough.
I suspect Odebajo would be better than Iorfa at left back, but I don't. That's based on nothing. Really.
Yeah.
I just think the way he plays fullback, he probably could do. I think essentially he's a bit like Palmer. I think Iorfa plays fullback like a centre back, and I think he'd struggle more being on his wrong foot. But it is definitely sort of armchair punditry at its absolute finest.
Oh yes, so it's a bit like the times of. Did you think Tommy Spur played left back as a centre back more often?
I think he used his frame like a centre back. Whereas neither Palmer or Odebajo can do that. They don't have the frame to do that. I think Fox is a bit like I think he's a bit like a sort of centre back style, and it's very much the modern.
Yeah.
It's very much the sort of, well, it's not the modern style. I think you are going back to people that are now essentially like fullbacks are wingers that do a bit of defending. But for a time it was just having whopping great athletes wherever you could. So you ended up with a back line full of 6-footers. And yeah, I think Iorfa and Fox are both in that mould. I don't. But I mean, I think Fox is a bit like, he's not as good as Palmer, but similar to how we were sort of discussing early before the season started, you're probably looking at him giving you kind of 6.5 out of 10.
I'm kind of wondering I'm looking at this from a perspective, like looking at the left back berth. Palmer's making that position his own.
Yeah.
With some two really good performances and carrying on. Not having, I signed a new contractitis.
Yes.
Or previously, I need a new contractitis for like really good play.
Yes.
And he's carrying on, and I think he did. We can talk about his. I thought he did really well yesterday. I was really impressed with him down at Reading. So I'm really eating my words about Liam Palmer, and I'm glad. I'm all for that.
Oh, me
my
too.
words about a couple of renewals, including Mr. Kieran Lee. He's looking incredible. But for left back, and then beyond that, you've got Fox. There's a question of whether you can move and kind of plug Iorfa or Odebajo around there, to depending on who you want to play at the right back berth. I think, and then from there also, I would really like to see a bit more of Mr. Matt Penny.
Yeah.
He was a player coming through great strides. I know there's like a little bit of he's a converted winger, isn't he? That's what people say. Oh, he's better further up the pitch. I mean, he's got a trick of pace about him, or at least last time we saw him previous to injury, touch wood, he did have a bit of pace about him. Who knows what if he comes back and when he does come back. I don't think he's personally. I really don't think he's that kind of far out of the first team.
It'd be nice to have him. His introduction to the team was fantastic.
It was incredible. Yeah,
I didn't personally see the games where he wasn't quite doing what he needed to do, or was letting things down a little bit more. But the games he's played at early doors I just thought we'd found an absolute gem, because he looked so comfortable on the ball, so confident. Was it Villa that we beat?
Yes,
Bruce was the manager
against Villa, and he was just incredible.
He looked fantastic.
The highlights of the very much the highlights of the Yoss era was, I think, some kind of development minutes and some revelation that some of our youngsters are actually pretty good.
Yes.
So we're talking about this while we went off and talked about Jacob Murphy. Jacob Murphy is more pace in the wing, another dynamic presence and competition for the free rolls.
Had an ideal
I'm really
start in terms of
surprised. I'm really surprised. I thought he was going to do well and have a good impact. So I was making these notes prior to the game.
Yeah.
And then obviously we'll get onto the game, but he scored with his first touch, and that was was his Wednesday debut. You can't really do much better. And like the Reading game, Harris had a stonking debut, and now it's a pretty great debut for Jacob Murphy as well. So Jacob Murphy is one of the two twins, as we mentioned, brother, coming Thursday nights on ABC. But outside of that, he was at Norwich, and he was plucked up for a huge whopping transfer fee to Newcastle.
Yeah.
The Newcastle fans don't seem to like him at all. But he has had like a bit of an impact in the Premier League. A little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe not as much as they hoped. I think that's the problem.
Newcastle fans are quite odd in some ways, aren't they?
Yeah. To be fair.
But like who they like and who they don't like, I don't know how much stock I set by it, because they're one of these football clubs, a bit like West Ham, that have this vision of we're not just a football. We've got an identity to our play. It's like when, because for like a year Keegan played some nice football. Grow up.
Yeah,
that was so long ago. You've just been another clodding team, bouncing between the Premier League and the Championship for far, far longer than you were this wonderful, dynamic, attacking force. And it's like the people that can't enjoy what Wednesday, relative success for Wednesday now because it's not 1990. It's like, well, time moves on.
Yeah. And this is the thing with football clubs, is that playing styles are much like fashions. They're transient and things change. Yeah, so it's that nonsense. I'm glad you mentioned West Ham, because it's like, the fans talking about people who play the West Ham way.
Yes.
The West Ham way, I'm putting in inverted commas. It's like as though it's an identity.
Yes.
And I'm like, it's not an identity to anyone but you who remembers it for whatever period of time it was.
Well, exactly, because I remember them harking back to the 90s. I mean, it was Julian Dix and Razor Ruddock and things. Exactly. That's the identity I assign to West Ham.
And then, I think about West Ham in that early 90s, and when they were, one of my first few prominent moments as a Wednesday night was going to the Waddle Game at Hillsborough.
Me too.
And, my dad taking me, and you were there as well, yeah. And it was absolutely pulling the pants down, pulling the Hammers pants down. And Waddle just absolutely rinsed them. And it was a fantastic game, and was it 5-0 we won that game? Or am I just getting deluded here? I think it was 5-0. Anyway, and then cutting to, I still remember my oldest brother talking about, you cut to match of the day and Trevor Brookings, getting a little bit quiet about his beloved West Ham.
Yes.
This iconic player who, still running his mouth about his lovely Hammers.
I know.
And they got hammered. Ho ho.
Boom boom. 5-0 was the score that day. That was unbelievable. Like that was unfair as an early footballing memory to have, because those days are so few and far between. You got to drink them in. So the final new edition, Master Bates or Mr. D Bates.
Mr. D Bates. Mr. D Taxi Bates.
Yes.
Ginger Ramos. Have you heard he's been called Ginger Ramos?
I heard the Ginger Ramos. Yes, it seems a bit spurious, but he's a monster. 6'4". Obviously, pretty good pedigree. The story of him ending up in Germany was the scouts were there to watch Portuguese centre back Bruno Alves, and they were watching an Old Firm derby, and Alves got injured after 10 minutes, which meant that Bates came on the pitch and absolutely ran the game and
Really?
saw out a clean sheet at like whatever age he was. I think he was 19 at the time. And they were so impressed they went back and watched him several more times and ended up signing him. So
wow.
I think he was a mainstay a couple of seasons ago. Last year he didn't play quite as much, but he still played 28 times for them. He seems to have picked up an injury kind of in between times and not quite established himself back in the team. But
do you think, are you implying, or maybe I'm just jumping to some rapid, wild speculating conclusions here, Rich, is do you think he's someone who's maybe done a bit of a Hal Robson Canu? You know, he's played from the fortune of some really prominent performances on a good stage. You think that's... Because the interesting thing I see about Bates is, I mean, he's come in and he's cover. I'm glad we have another body. He sounds like he could be promising. But I've also heard some stuff that isn't glowing in terms of him from a few different channels. And then there's the fact that he's a young player who's hopped around a lot at a young age. You know, he feels like he's at the age where he's been to a few clubs where, you know, you shouldn't be kind of picking up that journeyman mileage in terms of, you know, you shouldn't be looking a bit like a young, you know, Leon Clark type career at a young age.
That feels harsh to me as a reading, and for me, I think there's obviously an amount of wait and see.
Yeah.
Van Aken came with a wonderful sort of resume and really, really badly disappointed. So I think there's not. I think it's pretty hard to tell from the outside looking in how good a defender is. I'm just thinking in terms of who he's played for. Because I, as far as I was aware, I thought he was at Rangers and then went to Hamburg.
I think it's just more the mentality he's gone to Hamburg. How long has he been at Hamburg? Yeah, I think I can hear a few scuffles on the keys, so I imagine you have the.
Well, no, I'm trying to pull it up. It's not for some. Oh man, it's not easy.
This is top podcasting.
It's beautiful stuff, isn't it? Okay, so he was Wraith Rovers as a youngster, because given that he's 22,
yeah,
and
then he's kind of loaned around, and then he's worked his way to Rangers. So I guess, like, you know, promising youngster coming through. Let's just speculate story based off his looking at his Wikipedia entry. So he went on a development loan to. I've never heard of a development loan to Rangers before.
That shows you how young he was. I think we signed. We signed somebody on a development loan a few years ago. I think under laws, we signed someone under a development loan because if they're a youth player. I think we had so many loan players in already, we were able to sign another one on a development loan, maybe a goalkeeper or something, like an emergency backup.
So it's interesting that he signed on a 4-year contract with them last summer, basically. So I'm not sure of the, you know, and again, we can wildly speculate the story behind this. Was he holding out for that from...
Yeah,
he reneged on a new deal at Rangers to go to Hamburg on a free signing. That was summer of 2018. Yeah, so Yeah, so actually, I'm incredibly, impeccably harsh on David Bates.
We'll see. I'm quite hopeful. I think so most of the accounts I've read say that he's not too bad with the ball at his feet. So despite his pretty grand stature, he's not just a kind of lumpet big man.
That's good to hear.
He's also supposed to be very quick, which we don't have much pace there at that centre back position at the moment. I think if Borna is a success, then we probably won't see much of him. But I think it's nice to have an option that's not Van Aken and it's not sort of pulling Iorfa out of his natural position. He might not be wonderful, but I think as someone who we're potentially talking about as a kind of third or fourth choice centre back, he seems to have a decent pedigree. And to go back to our lovely phrase from American sports, there just seems to be a lot of upside to it. Because if he works out well, presumably we could pick him up at a reasonable transfer fee. We talked about not getting Michael Hector, but again, that seems like somewhere where we were pretty sensible. I think spending £5 million on a 27-year-old defender
I know
for his club with a year left on his contract would have been daft. So I'm glad we didn't do it. And then this is a paid replacement. This is good. I think this is good planning from the club.
And it is.
Fingers crossed Borna works out. The signs so far are pretty good.
Yeah.
So hopefully it doesn't. As I say, hopefully we won't see much of him. But I'm hopeful that if we do, he'll probably be able to do a job for us if and when it's needed.
We talk about square pegs and round holes, but it's a Bates peg in a Hector hole, really. And I know and I fully get. I'm glad that I'm chatting with someone on Twitter, chatting with Peter Lohman, who's a prominent Danish statistic Wednesdayites, and about the dealings of transfers. And I was wondering about Van Aken because it's still the foreign window is still open, so technically Van Aken could still be leaving.
Yes, okay.
And I think that would work well for Van Aken. And now in this situation, if I'm looking at kind of, I don't really want to look at the concept of Iorfa being a centre back, but I think if we had 4 centre backs, 2 for each position, we go Lees Borna starting, we have Bates back up, and I'd like to see Jordan Thornley.
Yeah, I think I count him in my.
I think he'd be there for that. But I was just saying, yeah, we've done such great business on such limitations.
Yeah.
Previously, when we want to get some meat on the fire, we've bought some very speculative, expensive joints of meat for the barbecue, for Colossus Meat on the Fire barbecue.
Yes.
Previously, that we've took them back and they've been a little bit rancid, or not as good as the not as good as the value burgers at Tesco.
Yeah.
With horse meat in them. But we've done some great, fantastic dealings. So I do applaud the concept of the fact that Bates has come in on a season-long loan. Apparently, he was very close to sign for Wigan.
Right. Okay.
And I
also wonder if he's
as podcast guest Paul Cook, revered manager, does seem to have a good eye for a player.
Yeah.
So maybe that kind of seems kind of decent. And he is coverage. And I know that, like spending 5 million on Hector wasn't. It's a lot of money for players 1 year. And as you said, hasn't kicked a ball for his parent club. I know we as football fans, Wednesday fans, and I think all football fans do this, you get these loan signings. And then, Ben Marshall, we talked about Ben Marshall, I think still a free agent, interestingly enough.
So it could be.
And was someone who I thought he would be arriving. I really was pretty semi-convinced that was going to be a good one, and one that was coming in. And I know Bullen was asked about that, the Football Heaven Manager special, and he just basically said, I thought it seemed like a non-committal answer, so I thought there was something in it.
Okay.
So he referenced the fact that like Alan Nixon talked about it basically in the paper in the Sun, and I was adamant it was going to happen. So I was really really surprised that out of the blue, Jacob Murphy came in from Newcastle, who I didn't think we'd be doing any business with. So the point I'm getting at, like my long Turner circles, my long Harry Maguire turning point circles come back to play. It's coming back to port. I know that there's a mentality, and we clamour for these signings of players who've done loans so well. But I would have loved Michael Hector back at the club. Loved it. And even we talked about, I think I would have liked to have seen this. I mean, he was incredible at centre back. But if you imagine even if you had a centre back that was better than Michael Hector, if we're playing some level of fantasy football, I would have loved to have seen Hector in the holding midfielder, just spraying him and Bannon just as a kind of buddy cop, much like your Hobbs and Shaw. Fast and Furious presents Bannon and Hector. Them like back to back giving quips, just spraying Hollywood balls around the pitch. Beautiful. That's blockbuster stuff. You know, Brothers purely just the chaff that's on American network sitcoms and would be commissioned to the UK to be on at Channel 4 morning contesting with King of Queens. But that's Hollywood stuff. If you imagine blockbuster, just a big budget Bannon and Hector.
Absolutely.
But alas, that's purely just a fantasy. And we have to deal with the realities of FFP and the realities of money at the club. So selling Zhao, not something that's keen on, but the money that's come in has brought in free signings, 4 signings, I guess. Well, 3 signings, probably.
I'm with you. It would have been lovely to have Hector back. We also have been in this position before, clamoured, got the loan player in, and then actually when they're not playing, they're not on their best behaviour, and they're a permanent player, they're no longer anywhere near as good as they were as a loan signing. So we have saved that ignominy in terms of Hector. You never know. But I remember a wonderful loan signing we had called Darren Potter, and then I remember an atrocious footballer that signed for us called Darren Potter, and supposedly they were the same person, but they were not.
Never the twain did meet.
No, exactly.
Double.
Yes, absolutely. I think in some ways Borna could be a more natural partner for Lees than Hector was. If he can kind of... My slight worry with him, and it's a bit of my note from the match, I wonder he's going to have to quickly get up to speed with the physicality of the championship. I think he's going to be tested on that because he looks a bit easy to brush over. I don't know whether it was particular with Barnsley, their manager, obviously coming from German football, may well, and particularly knowing quite a bit about lower league German football. I wonder if he knew about Borna and kind of had a little note to his players to, if you get the chance, give him a shove, get up against him. He doesn't like that physical side of things. But
wie sprechen, they don't like it up them, auf Deutsch?
Yeah.
That was basically saying, how do you say they don't like it up them in German?
So that's a slight little worry, but I think he can. I think he can overcome that. I don't just think it's a bit of being a bit more aware of how football works at this level. But beyond that, the fact he's left-footed, the fact he seems a pretty calming influence, I think Lees' performance yesterday was one of the best I've seen from him in a really, really long time. And I think Hector was very good, but I don't think Hector calmed Lees down. He didn't have that kind of Leuven's-esque kind of calm bearing on things. And it feels like Borna has that a little bit more. But it's obviously early doors. But I think having Tom Lees at ease, as well as having somebody who's very competent alongside him, that feels like a good combination. Whereas I felt Lees was pretty skittish next to Hector, and Hector was always, his lovely passes were fantastic, but one in every about 5 or 6, he would pass directly to the defender to the attacker that was stood right in front of him, and put us in all kinds of bother when there was no pressure previously. So I think that's the sort of thing that had Lees like, I can't actually be at ease here. I always need to be alert, because even when it looks like there's no pressure whatsoever, we could be in a situation where it's just handed to the possession is handed tamely to the opposition, and we just ask them to come at us. So we'll see. We should get on to the match.
Yeah, quickly, just to say the game against Bury was postponed. That's frustrating. And just a really weird kind of situation as to whether Bury Football Club will still be in existence and will still carry on, and that's the greatest sadness. More so than missing an EFL Cup game. I don't know why they don't just give us a bye. That's my take on the thing. I think it's just, you've got to say, if they can't put the game on, just cross it out and just move on. I think there are bigger issues with that football club, and it's really sad. It's really, really, really sad. What's going on with that football club?
Yeah. Oh, it is very sad, and the counterpoint to just cancelling the game and moving on and giving us the bye is, from Bury's point of view, it's a payday, and if they manage to kind of stabilise things in any way, the fact they've missed out on probably tens of thousands, possibly hundreds of thousands, is actually quite a significant thing to miss out on altogether. Because obviously there's and potentially, if it's postponed, there's TV rights to add on top of that as well, which attract a fee. So I could see both sides. I think from our point of view, it would be better if we knew where we stood with it, because it means potentially at some point we've got a match when other teams won't have to play. So this is at a bit of a disadvantage. Although this week it means we get a rest that other teams don't get. So it's swings and roundabouts, isn't it?
Very much so. Very much so. I guess it's probably why you have a large squad in this case, is because of injuries and also cup games. And if it goes ahead, if it does go ahead, when it goes ahead, it will probably be a second string side from Wednesday. We may see Kosovan Snooki lining up front alongside maybe Winall or maybe Mr. Jordan Rhodes. Who knows? Gives a chance to try something different and probably play some youngsters, I guess. But it's pretty sad. Anyway, that game is postponed until we know more. Yeah.
Okay. So you had some issues. You had some issues watching the match, following the match yesterday.
So my situation is self-imposed. So I feel like I'm doing pretty well in the podcast today, even though I'm pretty hungover. I had a pretty long second of Brad's birthday yesterday, which was a lot of fun. And a lot of fun time was had. The evening before, I've been looking after my neighbor's cat, Brittany's cat, Bagheera, a few times before. So she owed me a meal, and she said, I can take you anywhere. And where did I say I wanted to go, Rich? Olive Garden.
Beautiful.
And then she was like, really? And I was like, yes. So I went to Olive Garden, and I gorged myself on free breadsticks, soup, salad, only a little bit of my main, but that's in a takeaway box for me to reheat at work on Monday.
Perfect.
Good times. And had an impeccably disappointing dessert as well. But basically, I ate so much that I'm an old man. I didn't sleep very well.
Oh.
So I was up for a few hours in the wee hours of the morning. The games kick off at 3 p.m. in the UK, which is 8 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, here on the sunny beaches of Calgary, Alberta. So I tried to get up late and then kind of watch the entire thing, but it's just incredibly distracting on iFollow to have the situation that if goals are happening and goals are coming in later turning off. It's nice to kind of get up and have my little, in my bedroom, have my notes and have my little play. I've also tried to watch a bit of Sheffield United losing, which they drew on the Premier League coverage as well. So it was a bit patchy for me. I watched probably about 60% of the game, and I was a bit sleep deprived. And I'm really looking to you for this time, Rich.
Okay.
To lead.
I've got to break really terrible news to you, but they didn't lose Sheffield United.
No, Billy Blunt had a super sub appearance
and did a Tardelli-esque celebration as well.
That he did.
Because drawing with Bournemouth is just as exciting as winning the World Cup. So yeah, it was a great win. I think that's the first thing to sort of we've kind of we've meandered and we've huffed and sighed for a lot of the podcast, but yesterday was really good. I just sort of snuck in as we were kicking off, and as I said, I didn't notice that we were a little ginger. He did centre midfielder down until a bit later on, but almost straight away we scored. It was a sort of lump up the field. They didn't deal with particularly well. Harris got on it, and they were terrified. I think there was 3 or 4 men attached to Harris at every time he got the ball.
Very much so. Yeah.
He sort of tried to poke it through the crowd of players, and there was a very fortunate bounce, and it fell to Harris. It fell to Murphy, who, as we sort of touched on, with his very first touch of the ball, he killed it around the keeper and put us 1-0 up, which you can't get much better than that in terms of starts for the team and also starts for Murphy as a player. I mean that he would have been in absolute dreamland with that. I think the main thing that stands out, having watched us play a full game now, is the pace. It's completely changed the way that we're able to play. Yeah. We just simply didn't have anything to threaten teams when they were pressing us, and now we can clear the ball down either flank, and we've got somebody able to chase it, if not 2 people. And a couple of times we did create those breaks where it was kind of 2-on-2 or 2-on-1. It was just really nice to see. Fletcher was fantastic again. He really came out second half. He was desperate to get a goal. He was yelling at everybody. He was insisting he got the ball passed to him and things like that. And then he obviously got his goal after a wonderful little run from Murphy and a pass to Kieran Lee, who just did a gorgeous little couple of touches that pulled the defender away and made the space for Fletcher, who then sort of spun and put it past the goalkeeper. It was a really good goal, well deserved. It was getting to that stage where you worry that we'd been, second half in particular, we just were all over them from the kickoff. Yeah. And the longer it goes without getting a goal in that position, you start to worry: are we going to get sort of ahead of ourselves and get caught here? And thankfully, that didn't happen, and we did take that chance to secure things.
How much? And from what I seem to recollect and kind of gather from the game, but I think one thing that struck me about that first goal, Murphy's goal, is, and I felt like I saw a little bit more of this, but I don't know if during my sleep-deprived state where I'm just hallucinating things. It seemed like Murphy and Harris were kind of doubling up.
That didn't happen very much. They largely stayed on opposite wings.
But the fact that they had the freedom to, especially in that first chance, was Murphy on the right of that front three and Harris was on the right?
So Murphy played where Reach played last week.
Right.
Harris pretty much entirely stayed on the left, but Murphy, a bit like Reach, was given a bit more room to roam.
So that's why he kind of ghosted in around the back of Harris to be fortunate with that lucky deflection to kill it home.
Absolutely. And a couple of his runs were really good actually, because he pushed his fullback a good way back and then cut inside and sort of ran across and played it into Harris, who had, as a result of Murphy's run, had a lot of space available to him. I think on another day, we could have easily had probably a couple more goals, if not. I think it could have easily been 4 or 5-0, to be honest.
Yeah, Barnsley are an interesting team. They're one of the teams that play kind of like a nice high press. They've got a bit of energeticism. But I think the thing that you find in the Championship is you get these kind of the kind of lower minion teams of the league who can play some nice stuff and be promising and get some good wins and surprise a few people with their application and energy and the high press and the way they play. But they're all a bit powder puff and a bit lightweight. And that's the thing. Powder puff, I think, is the term I can think about Barnsley. So, but yeah, I'm glad that you're saying that, like we did, what happened is, we did kill the game off at the 2-0. It did feel like it was dead at that point. It did kind of kill the game off, in my opinion, from what I saw and what I felt. I guess like you can kind of talk about, I feel like in an interesting way, last week we had the same thing, speculative, kind of like, would this have been a turning point had it happened?
Yes.
And we talked about the handball on the line from Lees. A nice bit of defending from, in that case, from both Lees and the ref and the officials as well.
Yes.
And the stroke of halftime, that was quite a big moment, I thought, with the Barnsley chance that kind of fell into Woodrow, their striker, who looked to try and rip the net off and then pulled off a great save from Cameron Dawson. Yes,
I did. I think that was a note. Key moments went our way. So I mean, obviously, I think the first goal was one of those. That sort of deflection off two players into the path of Murphy. That was pretty fortunate, and we seized on it, which was great. Similarly, that save by Dawson was really good. He also had another good moment before that where there was a clever. So Barnsley, I think they look like a good sort of group of athletes. They looked pretty toothless. They made a couple of chances, but it was they basically got 2/3 up the pitch, and then when we decided that they weren't going any further, pretty much they didn't get to go any further. But they did have some really nice bits of movement, and maybe in time they'll find those passes and things. But we were really good at blocking the channels and not letting the balls through. But there was one moment where basically the fullback ended up kind of spinning inside, and Harris was caught up the field, and the ball was sort of flicked over Borna's head, and Dawson was off his line quick as a flash. And basically, the fact Dawson moved so quick, similarly to the shot on goal, his quick movement made it nothing rather than being a big moment. It was going to be a chance, but the fact he was out and a presence meant it just tamely sort of bobbled out for a goal kick. So I think he had a really good day. His kicking wasn't. It's always a question mark, but funnily enough, it's one of the question marks with Westwood too. But he, goalkeeping wise, he was. I thought he was really, really good. Very solid performance from Dawson. The other key moment that went our way was Borna cleared a ball off the line, and that was a great bit of thinking from him to follow in, because we were really caught 6s and 7s there. Again, he came in for some criticism last week, Odebajo, and to be honest, I think he deserves a little bit of criticism from yesterday as well. Although it was a fine performance and he played a part in it, he got caught dawdling caught on the ball in the middle of the field when he really shouldn't have been in that position, and everybody was sort of then rushing to try and fill in behind, and Borna had the sort of forethought to cover in the back, and Dawson was beaten on that occasion, and Borna cleared it. So those again a key moment. That if that goes in, it's 1-1, and it could be a very different game. But by and large, a really good performance and very comfortable. I would be worried if I was a Barnsley fan, the way that they play. I presume that they've got up playing that way. And I can only think what's happened is at League One, you don't have the quality or the level of athleticism that they're going to come up against more often than not in the Championship. And the fact that we were able to keep pressing them, they're just going to cause headaches for themselves again and again and again. Their goalkeeper thinks he's a midfielder. He is not. Fletcher caught him, I think, 3 times on the ball. People are going to catch them and score. I know one of my things in terms of like how we look ahead, I think after the first 2 games, it's natural to feel like, okay, I think we're probably going to have a bit of a better season than we maybe thought. But we've also, I think we've got to add the reality to that of we've played 2 teams who both of us put in the bottom. Well, I don't know. Completely. I've got Barnsley to get relegated, and I think on that performance, I'm feeling pretty good about that suggestion.
Yeah.
It's like they've got good ideas, and I think when it works, it'll work well. It seems like they did a number on Fulham, but I think they're going to get caught more often than not, and they're going to feel they're going to let lots of goals in.
Yeah. So I guess, as an interesting, we've had the first 2 games of the season. We knew we were looking at the Championship fixtures when it was announced, and I think a lot of people said that it's an easier on paper start. I mean, to still get 2 wins, to score emphatically 3 away at Reading.
Yeah.
Last week, and then also beats a local Derby team, in Barnsley. It could be a bit of a banana skin that they've come up and they've got that momentum, and they picked up a great win against Fulham the week previously.
Yeah.
And I know, and here's another thing is that, when I was chatting to my dad, always makes a point about how the fact that the new season starts and everyone's filled with joy and optimism towards what the season can be. No one ever thinks they're going to get relegated as football fans. And so everybody naturally thinks that they're probably going to have a great season. It's that kind of unbridled optimism.
Yes,
but the interesting thing with these 2 games is against lower, teams that we think are going to be in the lower half of the table. And, I know there's a degree of football fandom with this and the internet, and my dad's bigger than your dad, and waving our electronic penises around. But both Reading and Barnsley fans seem very, very confident that they would beat us comfortably in those 2 games. And then we've gone and just really shoved it up them.
I can see now, Luke. I shouldn't have tried to your controversial crown from the top of your head.
Because I'm gunning for it, Rich. I'm gunning for it. I'm training. I'm just thinking of problematic things to say all week. It's fantastic. Yeah. Anyway, maybe one day I'll learn to behave and be a better human being. Until that day, I'll say questionable things on this podcast. Anyway, speaking of instances that kind of, so I guess we had instances go away. I think if I had a tagline for this match, it would be we don't need no stinking officials. Because early in the second half, there were 2 awful bits of officiating. The first one was the handling outside the box from the Barnsley keeper.
Yeah.
Which was clear as day. I can't believe that was ignored. The other one was a little bit at the time I didn't think it was. That was the penalty appeal.
Yes.
Was it Fletcher was bundled over? And I was looking at it, and at the time I was like, I definitely think there's something in the handling outside the box. I was pretty staggered by that. That was poor. And I guess is the interesting thing is, especially now that the Premier League season kicked off this last weekend with now we've added VAR, which is as we know, and we've talked about off the podcast, and maybe a little bit on the podcast, it's VAR is a bit of a dog. But I feel like both those instances would have been given. I don't know what is the penalty. Sorry, the penalty in terms of the punishment for the crime given for a given for a goalkeeper who handles outside the area? How is that kind of dealt with in the law book?
Oh, I think it's a yellow card and a free kick.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was probably going to be.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if it was something more.
I think for a long time I thought it was a red card because it happened to Kevin Pressman once, but he was stopping a goal going in basically with his handball, so he got red carded.
Right.
Yeah, back in the day, keggers.
So that was pretty bad. But then I looked back and I saw, I don't know if you've seen a replay. It's been happening quite a bit on Twitter, and especially now that it happens a lot more that people now obviously are recording the goals going in on iFollow, so you can kind of see, you can quickly see elements before you see highlights of things that go, and things can get replayed, and you know we can all JFK the footage back and forth, you know, slowly and, in stages. But that's penalty appeal was one which I look back and it looked terrible because he's bundled over and then the Barnsley defender handballs it.
Yes. Yeah. I suppose it's all talked about swings and roundabouts, but last week we kind of had
the look for us
go our way.
Yeah.
And this week we didn't, but as you say, we don't. It actually, thankfully, didn't matter in either case.
We didn't need a rubber to green with officials doing their job. You know.
Yeah.
It's the same thing last week. You know, we managed to do a job so that like the decisions that hopefully didn't go against us, we didn't need to counteract them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the same thing again okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I to be honest, I'd completely forgotten about those incidents. But you're right. They were both. They both absolutely stood out. And I remember in particular thinking with the handball outside the box, there was no way that there was a Sheffield Wednesday player between the referee and the goalkeeper, so he couldn't see it. And I believe it was Harris that was sort of running, sort of chasing the ball that the keeper came out to take from him, and he was stood directly between the linesman and the keeper. So I was thinking that, well, who saw that and how did they see it? Because the person the people closest to it, including the goalkeeper, acted pretty much like he'd handled it outside the box. So, yeah, as I say, thankfully there'll be times where we'll have nothing else to talk about apart from the referee, but thankfully it didn't matter. Reach could have had a goal. Luongo could have had a goal.
Yes, I was actually glad we mentioned. I'm glad you mentioned the Reach one because I was just prior to this recording this, I did go back and look at the highlights. Did you think Reach could have done better in that situation? I feel like maybe he could have.
I think it looks like from that evidence that their keeper might be quite good at one-on-ones. I think he came off pretty well in a few different scenarios. It's hard. Reach isn't he's not a clinical finisher. He strikes a ball very well. He had a similar chance in the last friendly against Espanyol and sort of did the same thing. In terms of tactics, trying to chip it over the keeper is probably an all right idea and probably works out.
Yeah.
But when the keeper's as big as he was, and mainly he was just doing that sort of Peter Schmeichel thing of I'm going to make myself as big as possible and good luck trying to beat me.
Mm-hmm.
Which tends to mean that he leaves a massive gap between his legs. So that it probably wasn't the best choice there, but I think he committed to it. He didn't sort of spuff the shot or hit it badly. He hit it well. And then there's always that sort of luck of the draw. You tend to feel in one-on-ones you should come off better.
Yeah.
And I would hope that a striker would have had both those chances really. But I thought it was a really good run from Reach, and it made me quite hopeful if we're in a situation where we're relying on him in the middle. I think he actually did. He took a little to grow into it, but I actually think he did. He had a really good game in the middle, and probably better than when he used to get dropped in there under Joost. I think he had a job to do, and he did it quite well. Whereas he's looked a bit lost sometimes in the middle.
I've always, as much as we know, it's the the Sideshow Greasy Bob show.
Yes.
I talked about putting Reach as my potential player this season, and I love Adam Reach. He's a fantastic player, and it's really been a highlight of some kind of really depressing mid-table seasons the past couple of seasons.
Yes.
And I'm struggling with a concept here, which is like, so last week we had, we didn't Jacob Murphy, not Josh Murphy. It's that brother thing again, he wasn't at the club, so we went down to Reading and we did a 4-3-3, and we had Fletcher and we had Harris and we had Reach, and I'm like, that seems perfect because Reach is fairly quick, as we've kind of established, and chips in with a lot of assists, and is generally a player you want to be further up the pitch and causing damage to teams, whether he's just kind of nonchalantly drifting in from the wing to just smash home another screamer.
Yeah.
For his own goal of the season competition that he's having, let alone as part of the Sheffield Wednesday goal of the season. But I'm wondering if he's more effective in that midfield trio, because the thing I like, and the thing that's been, you mentioned how he was in that midfield three under Jos.
Yeah.
But especially with the fact that we've just so desperately missed Kieran Lee and what Kieran Lee can do when fully fits, fully on his game, on his day, Kieran Lee can do, is Reach was kind of doing a little bit of that previously. Like, he was the legs and just driving through the middle.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering now if he's more, it's not, but I'm just going off 2 games. Like, he was quiet at Reading. We didn't need him to have an impact. And that's sometimes the nature of football, is that some of your players can kind of take a bit of a backseat while someone else is the star of the day that game, and that's how it kind of works.
I think that's how I read it, to be honest. More than I think if we go back to that formation that played against Reading, I think if you have that formation play 5-10 games, I think Harris is probably the star for a handful of them. And I think Reach would be the star for another handful. I've got very few doubts about Reach and what he does. I think he's very consistent, and it might take a little bit of time to find his footing. But I also think, as you say, I think it might just be a case that at the moment Harris is absolutely shining. I would be amazed if Harris can play as well as he's done in the first 2 games all season, because if he's able to do that, we probably won't lose him in January, because I don't think anybody can be this good all the time.
No, that's a good point. And
but there'll be those games where he's a bit leggy, a bit tired, and Reach will be needed. And I think Reach will be up to the job. There's also going to be games, Barnsley tried to do it, where he gets doubled up, tripled up on. And again, Reach is going to love having that space. He's going to seize those moments and make things happen. So I think we're just in a really good. It's weird to be in this position, but this is almost what I was saying in terms of the balance in the squad. We've actually just got really good options right across that front line.
We do, we really do. It's we're at the barbecue and there's a lot of meat to go on the fire, Rich.
Yeah, it's an enviable position to be in, and it's the sort of thing that's making me quite hopeful for the season ahead, because you can only beat what's in front of you, and I do think I remember a couple of seasons ago when Sunderland got relegated, we sort of drew 0-0 there, and at the time, sort of people said, "Oh, that'll be a good result," but actually Sunderland were terrible, and 0-0 at Sunderland was actually was a bad result to get. Almost everybody did better than that this season.
Everybody seemingly went there and seemingly won and did better than yeah.
So I think there's a little bit of time will tell, but the evidence that we've got is that we're going to be in for a good season. If enough of those players can keep fit for enough of the season, we're going to be an absolute handful for anybody that plays us. Nobody will be looking forward to playing against that front line, no matter who turns up in it. And that's a really great spot to be in. It's really fantastic. And Kieran Lee's a contributor to that. Barry Bannon's potentially an addition to that. And I think Hutch is sort of undervalued in terms of what he does further up the field. He tends to be pretty good once he gets there. It's not his main job, and particularly yesterday he was sat a bit further back. But he's pretty direct and decisive in the way he acts, Sam Hutchinson, and quite often when he's found in those positions, he does something useful, whether it's getting a shot away or feeding somebody in who's in a better position. So no, I think. Without getting too carried away with all the caveats in place, yesterday made me pretty excited about this season ahead.
That's great. Yeah, good performance.
Do player ratings?
Please do. Yeah, I think you should kind of lead off this, and I'll kind of chip in with my little bits and bobs.
Okay, great. I'll try not to repeat myself because there are things we've touched on already. So Dawson, I've put him in at an 8. Kicking aside, I just think he had a really good game and was a big part of it, feeling pretty comfortable all the way through. I think he did a really good job being called in. Odebajo 6.5.
Really?
He contributed. He did his bit, absolutely, and he seems to have very good reactions. So there was a few times where he was maybe a little bit caught out of position, but did a good job of covering his backside or stopping.
He did a good couple of
I worry that he left us a little bit exposed at times, and I think he was guilty of kind of overdoing things or underdoing things, and at the wrong time. You know, he'd have loads of time and kind of flick the ball away casually, or he had no space and time and decided that was the time he was going to kind of like get his head down and try a little run. So thankfully it didn't cost us at all, and as I say, he played a part in keeping a clean sheet, so I don't want to be too harsh on him, but he's the only sort of question mark in that defence that looked very solid throughout.
I felt from what I saw it was a better performance than it was at Reading. I think I'd probably have him at a 7. I feel like maybe
I'm harsh.
Possibly, but then I also would have been a little bit harsh, like as a, the antithesis of you. I think I'd probably give like Dawson a 7. But I agree with you. I think
save at half time is so key to.
It was so pivotal.
That's the difference between winning and losing. So I put a lot of importance on that, particularly when he didn't have very much to do. Really, you can only do what he's. You can only beat what's in front of you, and if you're a goalkeeper, you can only save what's fired at you. A kind of base mark I've kind of gone for 7.5 as a base mark, so I think maybe Odebajo it's maybe fairer to give him a 7. Lee's 7.5, just very solid and steady.
He was good. It was a good Lee's performance.
Yeah, didn't do anything amazing, didn't do anything bad, just worked his way through. Borna, pretty much same as Lee's, but with an extra sort of half point for that reading of that situation and clearing the ball off the line, which again was key. So I'm giving him an 8. I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful for them as a partnership. I think early doors, but it looks like a pretty good pairing from what I can see. Palmer again, sort of 7.5. Full of running and pace. He made an amazing tackle in the second half, really like brave, almost sort of heart and mouth from the stands. But I can only think he absolutely knew he was going to win the ball, but he fully committed inside the box. And almost the player he was up against was going nowhere, so it didn't need to happen, but it completely sort of nipped an attack in the bud when they were starting to get a bit of a head of steam going. So he had a great game.
So I felt from the Worksop Express, I felt that, Jack Black and Kyle Gass must be on the pitch because this is some tenacious D.
And then you look at the Barnsley backline and it's like, this is just a tribute.
Hey! Yes, and.
Hat on a hat.
He was fantastic. I would have probably put
really
Palmer at an 8. I think for me, I'm really picking up what he's putting down right now. He's just been fantastic. This is it. So this is the whole talk prior in the show talking about the transfer window. I don't think it's looking too bad at left back. I'm really liking Palmer. If he can keep this up, I don't think he'll be as good for the entirety of the season. But if it's around, I think even if you prop in a few 6.5s and 6s,
yeah.
As long as he's not making any kind of big rash errors that are costing his games, I'm very happy with him at left back.
Me too.
I'm very, very happy with him being part of any kind of back four as it stands, even if he's playing right back or left back.
This is the sort of performance in terms of scoring players. Nobody had a bad game. That's what I was saying. That's the thing with Odebajo. He was a big part of a brilliant team performance. It's kind of like picking the shiniest diamond. They're all pretty good.
Yeah.
So it's a bit weird to be assigning a kind of numerical value to what they did, because on the whole, this was just a very, very, very good performance. We did exactly what we needed to do. We looked good doing it. And
well, that was that was the interesting thing I said when I think I talked last week about the Reading game. Was individually players were good, but collectively, defensively, it wasn't so great the week previously.
Yes.
So this is nice to have it both hand in hand with individual performances being great and collectively for that defense was really good. It's great to see us get a clean sheet.
Absolutely. No, it's really good all round. So the next, I've kind of bottled things in terms of man of the match, but here we go. So Kieran Lee, I've given 8.5. Oh, it's so good to see Kieran Lee playing like he's doing. And you can just tell it's like a symbiotic thing with him and the crowd as well. Like everyone's so pleased that he's out there doing what he's doing, and he's so pleased that he's out there doing what he's doing. And like I think it showed like after Fletcher's goal, Kieran Lee was in the net, like punching the air in front of the fans. It's just gonna. There's the potential for this to be a kind of amazing season for him and the team, because it's like he's snatched this amazing opportunity from complete obscurity and possible retirement. I think every game he plays is a gift, a bit like Hutch, I suppose. But he's playing like that as well. Like, it's really wonderful to see. He's clearly having the time of his life out there. And he can play better than he played yesterday as well, because we've seen it.
He had the time of his life, and he owes it all to Bruce.
Yes, yeah.
And he's doing some no one puts Kieran in the corner.
yes. But his touch for the Fletcher goal is that's that intangible. We talked about those kind of Carlos aphorisms. The honey to the soup one was the one that stuck with me. So we talked about meat on the fire. Honey to the soup, I absolutely get. Because it's a big thing, like with curries. Generally, if you put like a tomato in something, tomatoes are pretty sharp, but they're delicious. So you need to pair that with some sweetness. You need to take the edge off. You need to bring the honey to the soup. And
beautiful.
I read that as it is those little moments between moments that make the big things happen. And that little touch from Kieran Lee, it's nothing really. Like, Murphy could have passed it straight to Fletcher and we could have probably scored that goal. But the fact that Kieran Lee takes that little touch and then feeds it into Fletcher, it makes it easier for Fletcher. It pulls the man away. And it actually even gave us another option, because we could have fed in Harris on the left of that as well. But it all happens because Kieran Lee takes that step, draws a defender away, draws Fletcher's defender away, and moves the goalkeeper. It all happens because of those two little touches, and that is Kieran Lee in a nutshell. That's what he does. That's the honey in the soup. Beautiful. Loved it. So he's co-man of the match, I'm going to say. This is why I'm saying I'm bottling it. Um, Hutchinson, 7.5. He broke things up. He was sat quite deep, probably because of Reach playing, but he played a full part and had a couple of those wonderful Hutchie moments where he just kind of like somebody, an opposition player was faffing with the ball. He kind of like stood in, took the ball, ran away up the pitch with it. It's just what Sam Hutchinson does. It's his bread and butter. Similar to Kieran Lee, it's lovely to see him looking so fit and enjoying himself.
Well, we talked about like his goal on his 30th birthday last week, and it's people talked on social media about it. It's just so great to see him. I mean, he's a I feel we've talked about a few kind of man crushes.
Yes.
Rich and I are pretty cisgender heteronormative, but when it comes to football, we do bat our eyelashes at Sam Hutchinson, as most people do. He's an attractive man, but to see him just with this big, wide, genuine, full of life smile, just being so happy. And I mean, I know he doesn't score that often, and he also gave the quip last week in his post-match interview, being like, "Well, he said, well, I didn't play much under Yoss."
Yes.
You know, so the whole stuff with him goading and seemingly falling out with Yoss Lukai, and more confirmation that Lukai, didn't really have much of a clue. The fact that you just had we remember talking last season about why isn't Hutch playing, and maybe it was like unlocking some new bumper contracts that we didn't want to do, and purely it was just because the manager didn't like him,
which is so crazy.
It's so crazy, but just see him loving himself, like loving his work and enjoying it. It brings a tear to the eye.
Yeah, absolutely. Both of those guys really. Yeah, Hutch's whole career is, I shouldn't be here, so I'm going to make the most of it. Every tackle is the epitome of that, isn't it?
It's inspirational, Rich.
Oh, it's really amazing. Yeah. Adam Reach, Greasy Bob, as we've touched on. Again, I thought he played really well. I think he had I can see him really sort of seizing on that as a role if it comes, if it comes to him having to do that more often. It feels like actually he's going to be pretty comfortable in grabbing that opportunity. I've given him a 7 and docked him half a mark because of his missing his one-on-one. I think he should have scored it. Even though I don't think he did a terrible job with it, he committed to what he wanted to do, but he didn't score when he should have. Murphy, I've given him an 8. A tremendous start.
Yeah.
I think probably a result of the adrenaline dump after his scoring with his first touch, but his next 2 bits of possession, he looked a bit kind of herky-jerky and a bit kind of unclear of himself. But then he grew into it, and it was really nice to see him sort of build into the game. And I think towards the end of the first half, he had some really good runs, and obviously he sort of was a big part of us really rattling out of the blocks in the second half as well. So just very, very pleasing. I've sort of held him back a little bit score-wise because I don't think he covered himself in any glory set piece wise, and I hope we don't keep, unless he sort of ups his game considerably. I hope we don't keep sort of plugging away at giving him set pieces. He didn't really do much with the ones he had, and there was a couple of really poor sort of bobbly along the ground efforts as well.
But I mean, we're also in a position where we're missing Bannon, who's probably the first player on a free kick you'd want as Bannon.
He may never take them again if Bannon comes back and plays. But it's just worth noting he took several opportunities, including one very good position, and didn't really do anything with any of them.
Speaking of free kicks and a bit of a link-up play, I don't know if you're going across the front line, but Fletch took a free kick.
Fletch is up next. Yeah. He did take a free kick.
And
it
wasn't
really
bad.
Close from where we were.
It wasn't too bad. It could have been a lot worse.
I thought he was outstanding again.
Yeah.
He is just, again, he's enjoying playing. I think this system is built for him, and he's really thriving on that. And I'm sure he was sort of licking his lips at the prospect of going up against that Barnsley defence, because they all looked pretty meek and young, and Fletcher just bullied them all game. I'm sure they were so chuffed when he went off, because he just didn't give them any peace all day, and he won every header. He chested it down if he wanted to. He pretended he was going to run in behind and then went back. Just everything, every trick in the book, he was able to pull off. He just looked like a wily old fox against a couple of young pups, and it was really a joy to behold. And his goal was really good. He took that. He was obviously desperate to get on the score sheet, and took it with aplomb. It was an absolute peach of a goal. He's vital. How often Fletcher's fit and able to play sort of more than an hour of football for us is going to be a big part of how well we do this season. I do think looks like he's trying to get in the box more often than previously.
Yeah, I'd probably disagree with that.
But he looks to me like he's like, rather than being third or fourth thought, it feels like it's second thought after building the play.
Do you think that is this new hopeful touchwood reality of Sheffield Wednesday with this pace? Is that we've got players up there and he can kind of be in and around and kind of interacting with the players in and around that box? Because previously I don't feel we've really kind of had that. Or maybe the previous kind of formations, we've played the 4-3-3. It's more the 4-5-1, so he's more dropping deep to kind of keep the play going.
There's also I was sort of getting towards this a little bit with Ati Nuiu. If you've got no pace, it means that the defense can push right up. And we would see that all the time last season. He pushed right up. So that means when Stephen Fletcher wins the ball, he's just past the halfway line. That's a lot of work to do. And then he's got to get all the way into the box. That's a tough job. And he's not
a lot of
quick.
There's a lot of cycling and movement you've got to do in that point. Yeah. You've got to get the ball back and just keep it ticking along to kind of, it's almost like the way of yardage, right? It's kind of like you're eventually just increasing yardage up the pitch. It's a lot of
very much.
It's a lot of first and 10s and then second and 6 and then
So the fact that we've got pace means the defence needs to be further back, because you can't let Stephen Fletcher flick it into 30 yards behind you and hope you win a race against Harris or Murphy. You're going to lose that race more often than you win. So you can't do that. So it makes it easier. It's an easier job for Fletcher. And it's why I think in time, Nuiu might actually have some really nice parts to play in the season, because the standard answer to Nuiu is you push right up, because he's going to win that first ball, or he's going to make it awkward. It's going to go over your head, or he's going to flick it on. So the standard answer to Nuiu is to push right up so that you're not bothered, because he's not going to worry you in behind. But what do you do with Nuiu when there's pace around him? You're going to be sat on your goalkeeper's feet to try and deal with it, and then that's all sorts of issues. Then you've got Adam Reach, you've got Bannon, you've got people shooting from distance. I think he could really we could build a good game plan around both the front men, given the fact that we've got the threat of the pace in behind now. It's a really good position to be in. And speaking of pace and threat in behind, I give Fletcher 8.5. For me, he was sort of co-man of the match with Kieran Lee.
Wow.
Harris, I've given an 8, but he was just a nuisance all game. The joke I've written down is just an absolute pain in the Harris.
Hey.
It's more fitting probably for last week with QPR, but just all full of running, constantly looking to try and get behind his man. Their right back was pretty quick, but still got caught out a fair few times by Harris. And I think Bullen sort of touched about it in the post-match press conference. It was interesting. Harris, more often than not, took his man to the byline and tried to play the ball in with his left. He wasn't trying to cut in all the time. But I think that sort of threw the fullback as well. It was almost like he was expecting to get cut inside more than happened, and it meant that Harris was able to sort of do what he wanted to do almost always. It was good to see. I have made a little sort of caveat note. I think if we'd not won, then I suspect there might have been some questions over both him and Murphy in terms of quite how much end product there is. There's a bit of a kind of numbers game nature to being a winger. You know, you're going to run the ball down the wing X amount of times, and Y amount of times you'll get the ball. You'll be able to play the cross, and how many of those will be good crosses, blah, blah, blah. There was a couple of times that Murphy sort of took his man to the byline and then didn't cross, and sort of ended up sort of kind of stumbly bumming into the fullback or a defender and not really making anything of it. Harris was kind of getting there and then flicking a kind of left-footed crossover, which didn't produce very much. And he also had one opportunity to kind of, if he'd really powered at it one-on-one, it was when Murphy kind of took the ball down on the right wing, ran across the defence and fed him in. And essentially he could have got one-on-one with the keeper, but he seemed to take it onto his left, which left him in a sort of tricky position. He then wasn't able quite to shoot, and then he sort of tried to cross, and it didn't really work because the defender was there. So again, we're in the situation of shiniest diamonds. This was a great performance. Harris was fantastic. I just think there might be days when we're a little bit frustrated that he seems more comfortable kind of running himself down an alley and making a difficult chance for himself than kind of putting the pressure on himself of, I really should score from this. If he'd run straight at the goalkeeper in that position, he would have made life very difficult for the defenders because they got to cut across him, and chances are he gets taken down for a free kick or a penalty. If they don't foul him, then he should score. Because he took it on his left foot, it means that, you know, either he's pulling out a worldy shot on his weaker foot. Like I say, he sort of fudged that opportunity a little bit, and if he does that more often than not, I think we're going to have some days when we're a bit frustrated at his output. But he was great, and a constant thorn in the side of Barnsley. So it really is. I'm being nitpicking, but I think he's so good that he sort of, you end up nitpicking. He's been so good so far. So it's more of a testament to how good he's been that I'm kind of stretching for any critique.
Do you want to give a quick word about the cameos from the bench?
Yeah, I've got Little Joey.
Little Joey P.
Little Joey P. Brought on fresh legs, got stuck in, provided a sensible outball a couple of times. Palmer got a bit bogged down a couple of times, and he sort of made sure he was available for him. I thought it was a nice little. I was surprised he came on when he did, and everyone around me thought he was Luongo. They do look quite similar, and they both wore yellow boots. It's not helpful.
They're both of a similar kind of skin complexion, aren't they?
And dark haired and similar height. Yeah. So, yeah. But no, I thought he did a good job when he came in, and I think, as I said, I've got a bit of time for him. I think he does that job. He'll happily sort of come in and do it. He doesn't seem to have much ego about him. I think he's a fairly solid player. Sorry.
The continual disappointment of me by Rich's admiration for Joey Pelopessi. But it's fine. As long as he's not someone, I don't think we'll ever, we talk about options, we talk about numbers. I can't see us looking to depend on him. He'll get a few starting berths this season, but I don't think he's not going to be a first name on a team sheet, right? No,
never. But I think he's a good guy to have around. He can do a few things, and he'll do all right when he needs to. My and this is a bit preempted, but my one note I've written for Rhodes was he showed how good Fletcher is. Luongo, yeah. I've put a mouth-watering cameo. Looks like he loves a tackle.
It was Action Mass, wasn't it?
It was Action Mass. That's a town near Boston, isn't it?
I think it is.
So, in terms of going forward and not getting too carried away, one of the phrases that I heard at the ground and I've read on Twitter again and again is that now it's the case that it's Bullen's job to lose. He did a pretty great job of kind of straight batting the questions after the match, to the point where he made a bit of a quip. So he sort of asked, he sort of said, "Oh, we're really only concentrating on Millwall the next game. That's all I've got to do is we'll be back in on Monday. We'll be preparing for Millwall." And then they said, "Oh, and will that be the decider of that be the decider of whether or not you get the job?" And he's like, "Well, I don't see I don't see that Millwall have anything to do with whether or not I get the job." So he did a good job. So I think it's a question worth answering. Is it Bullen's job to lose? I think we've sort of shown our hand a little bit that we wouldn't mind that if that's the case.
Yeah.
At what stage do you think it becomes silly that he's not been named the manager?
I don't think that I don't think that Chansiri is putting any great time limit on. This is a X number of match trials. I think it's more, he is an interim manager, and the great thing I think we found, and football fans always say this, and I'm glad that following Steve Bruce slithering and sliding out of the club, off the road.
I just wish you'd say what you really think about Steve Bruce.
I'm implying, listener, that he is a snake, which a lot of people have said. So I'm just copying, and a lot of people jokes on that one. Anyway, but he's left. In Bruce coming in, the thing that was great. I did listen to an interview with Bruce the other day, which was, he was interviewed for 5 Live, and he talked about I can't apologize for being selfish.
Yes.
You can. Let me tell you this, Steve. You can. I understand how much you want this, and I understand what it means to you. But the way in which it went down, I don't think it made me a little bit easier about his kind of situation, his exit from the club.
Yeah.
I think the thing is that for a Bullen has a slightly different flavor. His Bullen berries are slightly different to the Bruce berries, the management that we've had. So, I understand, and I've seen, I talked about the Twitter gentleman, Peter Lohman, who did, I don't know if you remember, but when it was the caretaker period for Bullen, where we played West Brom, and some of the tactically what we were doing, and it was very similar to a goal that was Espanyol. It was to do with... Okay. I can't recall, but anyway, there's some of that kind of management is slightly probably different, but there are some kind of maybe 1 or 2 kind of similarities. We seem to be playing and employing a high press. We've got the pace. The thing that I was saying in relation to Bruce is, while it could be a bit different, some of the foundations have been put in place from Steve Bruce, which I think is something that hopefully we have to be thankful for. Yes. Even though the way things went down and it was upsetting. The positives were, it seems to be like Bruce has put a few things in place. He's brought in Ojabajo and Harris, maybe to a degree Borna. We're not entirely sure about that. Might seem something which is connected with some agents, but it's working out so far. And then seemingly Bullen has just picked up with that and ran with it. And then thankfully, I think the thing that a lot of people were worried about, which was a couple of weeks saying, a new manager comes in, they're not going to have time to look at the team and assess the squad and see what we're missing. But effectively, we've had the hallmarks in place through the two coaches that I think Bruce has left. The two transfer scouts that's identified for recruitment that Bruce has played. Probably had like a say in that. I don't think Bullen is. He's certainly not a dummy. Let's be honest. I think the thing that people were probably a little bit maybe a touch disrespectful to Lee is that maybe they think that he doesn't really have the connections in the game for kind of bringing in signings, and maybe he's not the name that kind of attracts or has that network. But I'm not sure if it really matters so much.
No, so I think that's the big thing.
It is. So the big thing has been the fact that, like, effectively we haven't been. And I'm kind of echoing the thoughts of Alan Biggs, who said this, which is like, what a huge benefit it is to Wednesday to have someone like Bullen, who's been around, who knows the place, who's been a part of the infrastructure in so many different capacities. He gets a degree of the culture, and he can just kind of come and take over that caretaker manager, and you're not panicking. You're not giving it to previous years. You're not doing something that you're giving it to even someone as illustrious who's going to have a very decent career in management, like Sean McCauley over at the Portland Timbers. But it doesn't feel like you're giving it to someone who's really lesser. I think we've clamored for a name because we want that kind of big identity and the big push. But having this period to give it on a temporary basis to Bullen, and however long that lasts for, I don't think we're in any rush to appoint Bullen. But I do think if things carry on, there is going to be a point where we're like, when are we going to appoint Bullen? And right now, it is looking that way. It's only 2 games into the season. Like we said, we could be getting a bit carried away that we've won against 2 teams that we think we're probably going to win against anyway. But the football looks good. The squad is good. There seems to be a togetherness within the squad. I think Bullen does a lot to kind of promote that. I think the players love him. The only question has always been for us, Rich, and that we talked about previously, and you've brought up brilliantly before, which is what happens when times go bad.
Yeah.
But I think the more we're seeing of Bullen, sorry, I'll just finish off here. The more we're seeing of Bullen, the more I think that he definitely deserves a crack at the whip at this.
Yes, he actually. There was a quote in the Yorkshire Post a few days ago where Bullen said, "I suppose I've created an atmosphere where I'm a friend first and a boss second," which has its upsides, but also does worry me for those darker times. But I just think you're getting to a point now where, barring something crazy happening, he's going to be named the boss, and if he's going to be named the boss, why not just do it? It will give him a boost to his kind of ego and stature in the dressing room. It provides a bit of reassurance for everybody. It stops people kind of just talking about the manager position.
But seemingly, I don't think there's a rush because there's not been any great. Like the news on that's gone so quiet, right?
I know, but I'm just looking ahead to fixtures. So let's say we get a result at Millwall. I mean, again, it's another team that we probably think will struggle, but it's another victory or a draw at a hard away ground. I suppose I'm just looking at it and just thinking like, it doesn't seem fair to Lee Bullen and the team to stay in this continual like, oh mate, well you are, but you're not, but you are.
Yeah.
And I'm just trying to think ahead to a point of, well, what game would you then? So then we've got Luton at home, we've got Preston away, QPR at home, Huddersfield
but
away.
I don't think there's a perfect time for that though.
No.
To go, I see your point, but I don't think it never seemed that way when Stuart Gray came in and did the caretaker manager and made it his own. it felt at one point a question of when, but it didn't seem, the pressure didn't really seem there to kind of when to pull the trigger, appoint him.
Oh, I don't know. I think it got to the point where it was almost ridiculous. I'm sort of Stuart Gray is the worry, I think, to me anyway, because he would just put together such a string of great results that you were just like, well, what's he going to have to do now to get the job? Why is he? And it got to that sort of tenor with the interviews with him. You know, it's like, what's going on? Is Mandarin crazy, not giving you the job? And now it's like, Stuart Gray is not going to be able to answer this question. I sort of butchered Bullen's very good response. So he was asked about the job, and he said, what I will say is we're now in preparations for Millwall next week. And then the next question was, are you having any discussions with the board? And he said, I won't be speaking to the board about Millwall, no. He did a great job.
Love it.
I've gone full circle. I was really worried about Bullen getting the job. I still have question marks, but there's nothing outside of. There's no options outside that don't have question marks. So I think we should give him the job and just see how he gets on. If we end up in a position where we're looking for a new manager around Christmas time, that could be happening with literally anybody. None of the other options are guaranteed. Other than we'd be paying them more, and the payoff would be more. So probably we couldn't get rid of them because of profit and sustainability.
And then the only thing that we said disappointing before is it'll be a really, as a Wednesday fan with a very sentimentality towards players and figures and like people who are mildly iconic during periods of times. If we ever have to sack and say goodbye to Lee Bullen, it'll be a really sad day.
Wow. Absolutely. Oh, he's totally bought himself an awful lot of goodwill at this football club.
Goodwill, yeah.
He just seems like a great guy.
I did feel that the one time that I had my picture taken with him before a Wednesday game when it was me and you. We went and we were in the executive suite.
Oh yes.
To look at me, an element of contempt that I was a grown man wanting a picture with and not a child. You know, people who should be having their picture taken with. But anyway, minor comment.
I'm sure there was no contempt. I think that's probably us, Luke. This has been a bumper.
This has been a bumper episode. The future episodes won't be anywhere near this long.
No, I think it's going to be a bit more.
The Joe Rogan-esque lengths.
Yeah, Jamie, pull that up.
Do you know how crazy nature is, Rich?
Oh.
Do you know a
gorilla will literally rip your head off your shoulders? Did you know that? There's a YouTube video. Anyway, right.
We're brought to you by Onnit, series of. We're also going to have sponsorship for boner pills throughout the episode as well.
Snake oil for the 21st century.
Exactly.
Well, it's been a treat. Yeah, I think as the season goes on, there'll be a bit more of a perfunctory nature to the episodes, but the tremendous transfer window and a great performance. You don't get many weeks like those as a Wednesday fan, so
you don't. So there won't be.
Yeah, good to dive in.
3-hour length episodes. Yeah.
No. Well, cheery bye, Luke. Have a good week.
Have a great week, Rich. Have a good one.
Cheerio.
See you, bye.